Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar. Thank you for your participation. I am Alba, the Portfolio Manager for Risk and Management at PECB. It gives me a great pleasure to warmly welcome you all in a very trending and discussed topic of ISO 37001 implementation, the key to protecting your company's reputation. No organization can afford to take the risk of bribery lightly. Investors need assurance that they have made every possible effort to prevent bribery at all levels of the organization. The webinar will list some of the measures which must be implemented if an organization wants to prevent and detect bribery appropriately. Now, I would like to introduce you to today's speaker, Mr. Jacob McLean, PECB trainer and the Principal and Managing Director of Kaizen Training and Management Consultants Limited. Please be informed that you can ask your questions at any time during the webinar by writing them in the chat box of your control panel. We will answer to them during question and answer session. I will now turn the time to Mr. Jacob. Thank you for your attention and enjoy the session.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. As you heard, my name is Jacob McLean, and I'm your presenter on this webinar, ISO 27001 Implementation, the key to protecting your company's reputation. Bribery is in the air. Just this week, we heard of the Russian economists being indicted for corruption. India has withdrawn its high denomination currency note, the country against corruption. Of course, there are other reasons. Let me give an outline of the presentation. Go through the introduction, effects of bribery. Bribery is a monstrous problem. We look at that. Then we look at the anti-bribery standard, the recently published ISO 37001 2016 standard. We'll look at the benefits of anti-bribery management system, and we'll also consider whether or not adoption of the anti-bribery management system is an upstream task. Finally, we'll look at the acceptance of this particular standard. The effects of bribery. Let's start there. George Cyril Fame, Associate Professor of Harvard Business School, in a research paper published in July of 2013, stated that using the survey data from firms around the world, I analyzed how the bribery has impacted a firm's competitiveness over the past year. Managers report that the more Bribery Act, which was enacted in 2010. The OECD countries in 1997 developed a convention on combating bribery of foreign and public officials. In France and Germany, anti-corruption laws are largely contained in the criminal codes and prohibit offering or accepting of bribes in both the domestic and foreign transactions. Most countries have some form of anti-bribery legislation. However, the practice is still rampant. The U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act requires organizations to have accounting and other controls in place to prevent and detect bribery, but does not specifically require broader anti-bribery programs. So legislation can go so far and no more. In fact, the law sets the floor. What needs to be done needs more than the law. This same act has extraterritorial reach and catches any other organization that uses any means of U.S. commerce. Those include emails, mails, faxes, bank transaction, and other similar acts. In the UK, the anti-bribery laws are the strictest internationally, according to Transparency International UK. Notwithstanding, bribery is still pervasive. So, the International Organization for Standardization has, through deliberate action and consideration, developed the ISO 37001 standard. This was published in October of this year, just last month. It specifies requirements and provides guidance for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and reviewing and improving an anti-bribery management system. The management system can be a standalone system within your organization, or it can be integrated into your overall management system. ISO 37001 anti-bribery management systems specifies a series of measures to help organizations prevent, detect, and address bribery. And this is important. The prevention, the detection, as well as means of managing anti-bribery. It's a management system. The measures specified by the standard include adopting an anti-bribery policy. This speaks to management taking responsibility. Of course, the policy would be developed by management in consultation with internal and, if necessary, external stakeholders. Appointing a person to oversee anti-bribery compliance, typically the anti-bribery manager, requires training, risk assessment, and due diligence on projects and business associates. So it is inclusive, not only looking at the organization, but the organization, the associates, suppliers, customers, internal and external stakeholders. Requires implementing financial and commercial controls and instituting reporting and investigating procedures, all in an aim to prevent, detect, and manage the occurrence of bribery. Bribery risk management is an integral part of the management system. There are some benefits to be gained. First, bribery risk management. It allows for the detection of bribery risks. So the organization will do a comprehensive survey, a risk assessment of all its aspects to find out where there are risks, where there are possibilities. We look at likelihood and we look at consequences, and thereby are able to quantify the type of risk. Having quantified the type of risk, in terms of the quantum of risk, we're then able to do an evaluation and put in requisite measures commensurate with the evaluated risk. Implementation of measures to prevent and control bribery risks follows the risk assessment. An action plan will be developed with owners, time frame, and of course monitoring and feedback. Overall improvement of risk assessment in the organization will be realized when this is approached, when the bribery risk management is approached and implemented. The benefits, there are several. Recognition. Certification by ISO attests to the adoption of international best practices in anti-bribery management. The committee that developed the standard did its work. And we're going to talk about that in a little while. This system is sound and it is representative of best practices. Recognition with local and international legal requirements and industrial standards, that's another key benefit. Business confidence and trust. Implementation of the 37001 standard engenders cooperation on the basis of trust, and this is absolutely essential. The 37001 standard will facilitate and enable customers, consumers, regulators, and others, all stakeholders, to have confidence. International partners have increased confidence in a company, in an organization which has developed and implemented the standard in its organization. Auditors and implementers trained on the standard are more likely than their untrained counterparts to implement and maintain a reliable management system. Cost reduction. And this is vital because the bottom line is always important to business. Implementation of strict financial controls, for example, separation of duties, independent financial audits, restriction on the use of cash, payment approvals, all these are benefits which come from the implementation of a management system based on ISO 37001. Another cost-related benefit is transaction tracking. All these are key benefits. Optimization of conflict. Importantly, organizations which adopt this management system will implement bribery culture. Awareness and training aspects of the system promote bribery, and composition will begin differently. There will be changes in mindset because of improved benefits and organizations providing minimum requirements and supporting guidance for implementing or benchmarking an anti-bribery management system. It is a comprehensive standard. It provides assurance to management, investors, employees, customers, and other stakeholders that an organization is taking reasonable steps to prevent bribery. And that's all that can be expected. When and if there's an incident, the regulators will look differently at the organization because those steps have been taken. Evidence in the event of an investigation that an organization has taken reasonable steps to prevent bribery will be available because the system will attest to that. So, given the various issues related to bribery, how widespread and even endemic it is in many jurisdictions, is adoption of an anti-bribery management system like swimming upstream? Is it an uphill task? It always seems easy to go along with the crowd, but that comes with a cost. Reputation, morale, the bottom line. Discerning consumers are demanding that organizations respect and protect the environment, implement quality management systems, and refrain from participation in corrupt practices. Consumers are enlightened. Social media assures that information can be had so easily. And therefore, if a country or an organization is engaged in bribery, it will be known. And hence, there is the need to do something. There's pressure to do something. So, swimming upstream, yes, perhaps, but it is vital. Anti-bribery management system should be treated similarly to quality, safety, and environmental management system, food safety management system. It is that important. No longer can we turn a blind eye and say, that's the culture around here, that's the way things happen here. We have to recognize where our world is trending and take the necessary steps. And ISO 37001 sets out requirements and provides guidance for a management system designed to help an organization prevent, detect, and respond to bribery and comply with anti-bribery laws and voluntary commitments that are applicable to its activities. While it does not specifically address fraud, cartels and other antitrust, anti-competition offenses, money laundering, or other activities related to corrupt practices, the framework of the standard enables the organization to voluntarily incorporate such measures in its ABMS. Depending on where you are, depending on your context, you can adopt other measures other than those implied by the standard to prevent, detect bribery. The standard is the newest weapon in the anti-bribery arsenal designed to fight bribery. It is the first international anti-bribery management system standard designed to help organizations combat bribery in their own operations and throughout their global value chain. Adoption of the system then is such that it can be implemented in a way that assures stakeholders that the organization is seeking to adhere to best practices, international best practices. Hence, resistance may very well be lower than one would have thought. It has the potential to reduce corporate risks and costs related to bribery by providing a manageable business framework for preventing, detecting, and addressing bribery. Let's talk about acceptance of the standard as we move towards the close of this webinar. If involvement in the development of the standard is anything to go by, any indicator of its predicted widespread acceptance, then it is worth noting that 37 countries, including highly developed middle-income and emerging nations representing the world's major trading blocs, participated in ISO PC 278, the committee that developed the anti-bribery management system. 22 countries had observer status. Widespread participation indeed. Niels Stansberry, the chair of the ISO project committee that developed the standard, said, bribery is a significant business risk in many countries and sectors. In many cases, it has been tolerated as a necessary part of doing business. However, increasing awareness of the damage caused by bribery to countries, organizations, and individuals has resulted in calls for effective actions to be taken to prevent. ISO only develops standards that are in demand. Clearly, management system addressing anti-bribery is in demand. Hence, development and will enable organizations that have time and resources to develop internal systems, internal controls, and processes to prevent bribery, gain momentum, and broaden those efforts. So a tool has been provided that can take organizations with separation of duties, cash management, signature controls, and other rigorous internal controls exist. The standard will simply provide coherence through the implementation of such concepts, a process approach, risk management, and hence it will enhance is already in place. It will be much easier to provide transparency and clarity on the measures and organizations have been putting in place and how to implement them more effectively and efficiently. That brings us to the end of the webinar. There are training courses available, and my hostess will speak to these.
Thank you, Jacob, for a helpful and informative session. I want to apologize to the attendees for the technical difficulties that we had during the webinar. Additionally, I want to inform you that PECB provides training and certification services for ISO 37001 Introduction, Foundation, Lead Implementer, and Lead Auditor. A PECB certificate will demonstrate your dedication in implementing and managing risk management processes and frameworks, and most importantly, you will be recognized worldwide. Exam and the certification fees are included in the training price, and the participation certificate of CPDs will be issued to participants. If you are interested in more details or in scheduling any of these trainings, you can find the link I have just sent you in the chat box. We'll now go on and see the questions from the attendees. The first question is, in which countries can ISO 37001 be used?
That's an interesting question. In fact, any country that has adopted ISO standards can freely adopt this particular standard. So if you're using 14,001, 9,001, 22,000, or 27,001, then it means you can also use this standard. Of course, you would need to consider the particular context. Any country where there's an issue, I dare say every country has an issue with bribery, and therefore would need to consider adopting this standard. So there's no country that is exempt. It's your choice to adopt a management system that is guaranteed to deliver value in preventing, detecting, and managing anti-bribery.
Thank you very much for your answer. We'll go now with the next question. What is the difference between bribery and corruption?
Well, they are so closely related. Corruption indicates that some practices are happening which are contrary to good practice, to legal requirements, for instance. So taking of bribe is an example of corruption. Paying off somebody in order to lower prices or whatever for the organizations indulge in corrupt practices as well as individuals. I've had an instance, well, more than one instance, where I've been approached by contractors. And of course, one has to reflect on what the possibilities are. Of course, personal morality comes to the fore immediately, and more so, the implications, the legal implications, the reputation of the business, your organization. So corrupt practices are many and varied, and bribery is an example of one.
Thank you again for the answer. We'll now take another question. Could an organization get certified with ISO 37001 just like the ISO 27001 and ISO 9001?
The answer to that is a simple yes, but of course the processes are pretty similar to implementing, and there's a lead implementer course for this standard that PECB offers. So the path to certification is pretty similar. You do your preliminary work, your risk assessment, your gap analysis, and you embark on the process towards certification. So yes, the answer is clearly yes, and this is something that is worth pursuing, especially if you're having a problem and your organization has issues with controls. This is the perfect standard for you.
Thank you very much, Jacob. It looks like we have covered all of the attendees' questions. Is there anything else you wanted to cover up before wrap up?
I'd just like to mention the fact that courses, depending on where you are in your journey, there are courses that fit your situation. And PECB is global, it's highly reputable. It not only provides training and certification for persons, but for management systems as well. And so if you are considering a provider, PECB top. I'm happy to have been able to present on this webinar. Thank you so very much for your participation.
Thank you, sir, again, and thanks to everyone who attended this webinar. We appreciate you being here. I want to inform you that this webinar is also recorded and can be found in our website and YouTube channel. We will also send you the link of the webinar in your email in the upcoming days. Don't forget to check back on our upcoming webinars on topics of your interest by visiting our website or social media pages. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you next time at the same day, same time. Have a great weekend.